Okay, boys. A lot to do today. Not a lot of time to do it. You know, I've got Science Olympiad State Tournament coming up this weekend, so that's a big part of my life right now. So anyway, we've got Christian Humanism to teach. Chapter 6. Sin. Okay. So we spent the last chapter talking about this very crucial part of the intellect and the will, how our decisions are made, how we make choices, the nature of voluntary human acts. So, quick review. When we make a decision, when we make an intention, first, that intention exists only inside the mind. It has not been actualized. Okay? Let's look at emotions. You know, your emotions are something you can't control. They're not voluntary, and therefore there's no moral good or bad character to them, because they were not voluntary human acts. You can't assess their moral character. But once you take in emotions, once you act on those emotions, that's voluntary. Acting on your anger to punch someone in the face that's been harassing you all night long, that's voluntary, okay? You took your emotions and you willingly acted on them. So when we make a decision, it involves the interior act. The interior act is forming the intention, okay? Some guy's been harassing you all night long for weeks and weeks and weeks, let's say a bully, okay? And you've had enough with this guy, you're fed up with him, you say, next day when I go to school, I'm going to punch the heck out of this guy. Okay, you're fed up. And the next day you come to school, he's not at school, he's out sick that day. So, obviously, you don't punch him. Now, in a case like that, your interior act, you have formed the intention, you wanted to punch this guy, you decided upon that the night before, but that interior act and that intention never got transferred into an exterior act. You never actualized it. You never perfected the act. Okay? So, this right here, the interior act, the intention, is enough to assess the moral quality. Okay? You willingly decided to make that intention. You willingly decided to punch that kid in the face come tomorrow morning. So, vincible and invincible ignorance are, in terms of the decision-making process, deficiencies of the intellect. Okay? When you're ignorant, you don't have all of the necessary information that you would have needed to have. So, I use this example in my other video. Bullying campaigns are publicized all throughout elementary, middle, and high school. You should have known not to do it. Okay? So, vincible ignorance, I didn't know, there's no excuse why you didn't know. You can't use that as a reasonable excuse as to how you performed this evil act. Because remember, harassment is evil. Now, invincible ignorance is another deficiency of the intellect. And remember, the intellect is part of the interior act, plus the will. The intellect makes its last practical judgment to the will gives its consent. You guys can watch the other video if you need review on that. So, after we've gone from the interior act and we've actually perfected our act, when our act has been actualized, we start to develop habits. So once you bully a kid, first time you did it, you may feel a bit guilty. Okay? Natural. Most bullies do that the first time they, give a kid a wedgie. Maybe he didn't deserve that, maybe he was having a bad day. The guilt starts to creep in. But as you do that more and more times, 4 or 5 more times, you start to get used to it. Your interior act starts to become affected by the exterior acts. So, once the interior act becomes affected by the exterior acts that have happened previously, that's when you form a habit. So, and what that does to your decision-making process is it makes it a lot easier to do that one thing over and over again. Okay? Maybe you had misgivings about it the first time. The second time, it's a lot easier because it's explored waters. Okay, you've done it before. You know what it feels like. It's not like trying something new anymore. It's easier. Make the act easier. Okay, now this is not intrinsically evil. This can be good or evil. Okay, you can make a habit out of putting money in the little basket they pass around at church every Sunday, I should say. It's not something intrinsically evil, but it does reduce the moral quality of the act. Because when you form a habit, the previous exterior acts are impairing your interior act's ability to function properly in accordance with the information it's been given. It has a predisposition. Habits predispose you to act a certain way. Okay? So if you're predisposed to put money in the bin every Sunday, then by the time the 50th Sunday rolls around, it becomes almost automatic. It's like you're not even thinking anymore. It's robotic at this point. You really don't have any voluntary, intentional control over that choice, over that act anymore. So thus, the moral quality of an otherwise really good act has been reduced to almost nothing because you really weren't in control of that process. This is the triangle of your choices and how we quantify and analyze the moral character of your choices. We try to understand the object, which is what was done. We understand the end, which is why it was done. And the circumstances can answer a lot of rather minor questions, like how often, how much, to what extent, to whom, where. A lot of the details that might partially affect the moral character. Okay? So one key thing to understand about the circumstances here is that these circumstances cannot change an act from good to evil or vice versa. They can't make it from good to evil or from evil to good. The circumstances can only change how good or evil an act is. Okay? The object and the end here are really what define whether it is good or evil. What line of the divide does it stand on? So when we're talking about objects, okay, the object and duality, like I just said, evaluates whether something's good or evil. Okay? But there are certain objects that are intrinsically evil. Now what that means is if you commit an act like this, the end doesn't matter. It will always be evil, no matter what the end is. So moving on, we've also got the end. Okay. Now, we've covered end for what has it been, 3 units now. I think we're all confident in what an end is. So the part that it plays in this triangle of moral act is, let's say you take an object that is usually morally neutral. Okay, let's call it making a bed. Okay, well, we can probably agree that making a bed is a morally neutral act. So, on normal circumstances, doing it as part of your morning routine, it would be a morally neutral act. However, if you were to go down and volunteer at the senior citizens home, and you spend your time there making beds for them because, they pay good money to not make their own beds. They're in retirement, let them have their fun. That would be morally good because your intention is to help someone. Now, the conversation about end can bring us to two very important vocabulary words. We've got the proximate end, and we've got the remote end. Okay? So, a lot, you always hear this in like planning lectures that you may get from your parents or from your guidance counselor, so on and so forth. In life, we all have goals, okay? We all have goals. Now, let's say your goal is to become rich and famous. I'm sure all of us can relate on that. Your goal is to become rich and famous. That's a remote end. It will happen after a very long period of time, and it'll happen after a lot of different hurdles and obstacles and choices that you make. So your remote end can be broken down into lots of much smaller goals. Like, for example, you could learn how to make money online. You could try to gain a following on social media platforms. You could start an advertising campaign. In the famous category, you could do numerous different things to try and increase the amount of money and fame you get, but each of those is a very small step. For example, taking a course online about how to use Shopify.com has the proximate end of learning how to use an online store and learning how to build an online store, and the remote end of eventually being able to exploit that store to become much richer than you are now. So the proximate end is the immediate intention of the act, which you will more or less instantly get out of it as a result. And the remote end is the intended result of a very large series of acts. Okay? Remote end could be, I want 100 average this trimester. You need a set of proximate ends that I want to get 100 on this test. I want to get 100 on this test. I want to get 100 on this quiz. I want to get 100 on this project. They're like steps to a whole. The proximate end is, technically speaking, your means to achieving your remote end. There begs the question, do the ends justify the means? And now let's look at that, okay? So let's say your end was to become rich. Okay? We can all relate to that. Your end was to become rich. So, like we said before, that involves a lot of proximate ends in order to get to that remote end. So, among these may include things like getting a high-paying job, overtime, maybe working a second job, investing wisely, or maybe we could do something else. Maybe we could pull my name is Walter Hartwell White. Maybe we could rob a bank. Maybe we could tap into those deep inner genetic urges we have in ourselves to look at that elderly gentleman walking down the street with a bulging wallet in his right pocket, brimming with cash. Oh, you can almost see the 100. Not that I would know anything about that. Pickpocketing. So you guys get the idea. There's a lot of different ways to achieve our ends. Okay? So rich, that's not something bad. Okay? Getting rich is not a bad thing by any moral or religious standpoint. Okay? Some might argue it's good, some might argue it's neutral. My point is it's not bad. But what could make it bad, or what could make it good, is how you get there. The morality of the means partially determine the morality of the end. But the end, if the end is good, it does not mean that the means are good. Okay? You can tell robbing a bank is something really not good. So no. The ends do not justify the means. We have, earthly judges here on earth and courts and whatnot. We also have the ultimate judge up there in heaven as God. Okay? God is judge over all. But it is important for us to realize why God is able to be judge over all and we are not able to be judge. We are able to be judge in some circumstances, but not in others. God is omnipotent, okay? So that brings us back to this idea of the interior act. God knows all of your interior acts. God knows all of your intentions. God knows everything. So even if you did not actually steal Timmy's wallet, God knows that you intended on doing so. God knows that you intentionally paid attention to that $100 bill sticking out of his pocket. God knows that even though it caught your eye, you still stayed on it. You still followed him round the corner. As he entered the bakery store, you still spent all that time sitting next to him, waiting for an open shot. You were this close. Anyway, so God is able to judge everyone because he knows all of your interior acts, all of the sins that you, all of your sins that happen due to your intentions, okay? Here on earth, we are capable of judging things, but we are only capable of judging the exterior act. But even less than that, we are only capable of judging the object and some of the circumstances. We'll never be able to judge this because we'll never be able to know this. Only God can know your true intentions. Only God can know your true end. Okay? That's why all the law systems in the world are based off of the object of the sin, not the end. It doesn't matter if you were robbing the bank to pay for your grandmother's cancer treatment. The object was evil, even though the end was good. So, next I want to look at this thing called the lie. Okay? Now, the lie is something interesting because the lie is one of those sins that is fundamentally contrary to human nature. It is fundamentally contrary to the intellect, which has truth at its proper object. Every human being seeks the truth. And lying, deception, is fundamentally contrary to that. And as a result, lying has become one of the most serious sins in existence, okay? If you, let's say you're not a pathological liar, let's say you have no mental disability, and you lie every single time. Well, if you look at the hierarchy of hell, you're way down there. Okay, let's cut that out. So now let's look at. All right. Now I want to take a look at what is commonly regarded as one of the most serious sins: lying. Now, a lie is something fundamentally contrary to human nature because, as we learned in the first trimester, every human person is constantly seeking the truth. Every intellect has the truth as the proper object. So, lying, intentionally deceiving someone, is one of the worst sins. So, let's look at exactly what a lie is. So, first of all, it has to be a false statement. Okay? You can't lie unless you're not telling the truth. 2, you have to know it's false. Okay, that comes back to earlier units. You have to know the evil that you are doing. 3, you have to intentionally try and deceive this guy. Intentionally deceive. And the 4th is it needs to be told to someone who has a right to the truth. So, for example, you telling your art teacher that you love art class, yes, it's a false statement, because no, I don't like art class. I like art class. Just bear with me for the example. I know I don't like art class. I'm intentionally trying to deceive my art teacher, but my art teacher has no right to my feelings about the course. Okay? He has a right to know whether I did the homework last night, but he doesn't need to know whether or not I love his class. So next we're going to look at one of the more difficult to understand topics here, and that's the law of double effect. Sometimes there can exist an act, an object, that we can take that will result in multiple outcomes, some of which are bad, some of which are good. Okay? Let's say, for example, that you are the government. Okay? And there's this one farmer who's on his rightfully owned plot of land. There's this one farmer that's really not respecting the environment, okay? He's using more than a healthy amount of pesticides. He's polluting the water with the excess fertilizer. He's really not practicing proper environmentally friendly farming practices, okay? And he's a really big farmer, so he has quite the impact, okay? Now, taking this man's land, the object, is not really something good, okay? It's not the worst thing you can do. It's not really bad, but it's not neutral. It's slightly less than neutral, okay? This guy rightfully bought his land. You can't take his land. But the end is you are saving the planet. You're taking out this guy that's been destroying the terrain and the river and the groundwater and ruining the water for what is likely other farmers and other organisms. So that's a really big, good end. But the other thing is this guy's a big farmer. He produces a lot of the food that ends up in your grocery stores. So food prices are going to go up because there's less supply. That's a bad outcome. Also, you just put a farmer out of business. He's probably got a wife and kids. He can't feed his family anymore. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. Phone's battery died. Kept teaching the lesson. Had no idea. Yay me. I love life. My luck is great. So, sadly, you won't be able to see me write it live, but I'll continue teaching it just for you guys. Just for you guys. So, we covered all the different types of cooperation here, okay? So first you've got formal cooperation. Let's use the example of me and my friend are walking down the street together. We see the gentleman with his wallet sticking out of his pants. I lean over to my friend and I say, here's the deal, man. You're going to walk in front of him and you're going to ask him if he's ever felt like he wanted to be younger again. Okay? And you're going to talk about this new drug, pharmaceutical, whatever you've been developing. Now, me, I've got the skills we need here. Just whoosh in. The wallet, it'll be like it was never there. Okay? At the end, you and I split the money, and we'll all be happy. Okay? So, what happens here is the man agreed to the act, he agreed to distract him, and he agreed to the end. Okay? He agreed to stealing the man's money because he was going to get a cut of it. Now that's in contrast to me telling him, okay, you owe me a favor, you know the deal we have, you got to pay that back. I'm going to call in your favor now. You got to go distract this guy for me so I can take his wallet. He's agreeing to the act because I forced him to agree to the act, but he's not agreeing to the end because I'm not giving him a cut. He doesn't want to steal the guy's money. He just knows that he owes me a debt. Now, the rest of these, I think it's better to use the bank robbery example. That's a lot easier of an example. So, you're a bank robber. Let's say I'm the hacker, okay? I need to take out security, I need to take out the booby traps, I need to take out the cameras. And this heist does not go on without me. I need to get the combinations to the vault, and you can't rob the bank unless I give them to you. So, in that, I am immediately cooperating because I am willingly contributing something that you need. The heist doesn't happen without me. That's in contrast to immediate cooperation. Now, immediate cooperation is most obvious when it happens after the fact. So let's say you've already robbed the bank, you're done. You come knock on my door and say, look, got some heat on me right now. Can I stash the money in your house while I go hide out for a few weeks? Sure, whatever. That's immediate cooperation because I'm providing a place to stash the money. But the bank robbery's already done. The bank robbery happens regardless of whether or not I let him store the money in my house. But another characteristic of immediate cooperation is if I don't provide this guy the stuff he needs, he's just going to find someone else to do it. So the heist goes on without me. Proximate cooperation is you being in the time and place that the evil is taking place. That stands in contrast to the example I just used. Remote cooperation, you're not actually in the moment seeing the evil that's taking place. Guy knocks on your door, asks if you can store the money there. You say sure. You don't feel as guilty because you're not seeing all the hostages and whatnot that went into that bank robbery. Now, when we talk about material cooperation, there's a little deeper we can go into that, because this idea of fear is kind of abstract. So, first of all, doesn't matter how compulsory your behavior seems. Nothing is affecting your interior act. The interior act is where the sin takes place. Even if someone is torturing you, you still have your free will intact. You can still choose not to do whatever they're asking you to do, despite torture. You still have the ability to freely choose to give in or not to give in. Okay? Now that seems pretty cool. Pretty cruel. Not cool, cruel. Can you really still be held accountable until death of your decisions? Not really. And what I mean by that is you are not obligated to suffer more evil than you are preventing. So let me go back to my example of me and my friend walking together on the street. See the guy, think wallet. Let's say there's $100 cash in there. $100 that we can usably steal. Because, you can't really take credit cards. Maybe there's a gift card or two. Credit cards really don't work. Police show up at your house. There's red lights flashing outside. You gotta talk to your parents. Back on topic. So, where was I again? Oh, yeah, me and my friend about to steal the wallet. Fun times. Let's say I tell this guy, you got a favor to do for me. You know we swore to always keep each other's favors. You got to distract this guy so I can take his wallet. Now, I'm pressuring him. I'm materially trying to force him to comply, trying to cooperate with me. But he still has the ability to say no. Okay, now I'm not a violent person. The only thing that he would suffer by saying no is now, I kind of hate him. So, him saying no, he is suffering less evil than this man would have suffered if he lost $100 that day. Okay? That would be something he is morally obligated to do. If you will not suffer more evil than the evil you are preventing, then you are morally obliged to take that course of action. Now, let me give you a different example. Let's say I'm a violent person. I'm not a violent person, but let's just say for example's sake. If this guy says no to me, he's got the threat that I'm going to beat him up because he said no. In that case, then yes, he would be suffering a greater evil than the evil he's trying to prevent. I think all of you would probably agree that your health is worth more than $100. So he has no moral obligation to say no to me if there is a threat that he's going to get beat up as a result. So the last little topic we have here is the comparison between passive and active cooperation. Now, this is interesting because it's a pretty easy distinction. It's a nice little topic to end off with. Passive cooperation is you not doing something that you should have. Let's say you're across the street from a bank robbery. You see the bank robbery going on. You see them taking everyone's cell phones. No one's able to call 911. You're sitting there, phone in your pocket. You are morally obliged to call 911. Not doing so would be passively cooperating with the evil. Active cooperation is among these. Okay? You are actively, like, sitting next to the guy robbing the bank. You are cooperating because of an act that you actually did. So, yeah, guys. Wish me luck at States tomorrow, and thanks so much. Enjoy life.